The first thing that shattered the quiet of the night was the sound of something fragile hitting the marble floor, followed by the uneven footsteps of a woman who had clearly run far beyond her limits. Adrian felt his heart pound as he reached the top of the hotel staircase, just in time to see Lyanna, the CEO he worked under, the woman who carried half the city's weight in her decisions, leaning heavily against the wall, struggling to breathe, her eyes glassy with exhaustion and alcohol. It was the first time he had ever seen her like that, stripped of her authority, stripped of her perfection, almost collapsing under the weight of a pain she never allowed anyone to see. And the fear that flashed in her eyes in that split second, the kind that didn't come from intoxication but from life itself breaking something deep inside, grabbed him harder than anything he had felt in years. Ripple of love, if you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, you're invited to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly keeps these stories alive. Adrian had only stepped out for a breath of air after finishing his late shift, ready to return to his small apartment where his 10-year-old daughter, Iris, was probably still awake waiting for him. He had expected nothing more dramatic than the hum of the city at night, but fate had different plans. And now he stood in a hotel hallway lit with soft golden lamps, watching Lyanna slide toward the floor, her gold dress rumpled, her breath shallow, her emotions clearly drowning in whatever storm had driven her to this point. Adrian's hands shook not because she was his boss, but because something about her reminded him of the nights he had spent sitting silently in a hospital waiting room when his wife was still alive, praying for miracles that never came, trying to hide his fear so Iris wouldn't see. He knew what it was like to fall apart alone. The next moments unfolded like a quiet, cinematic blur. Adrian reached her just before she completely collapsed, catching her with the cautious gentleness of someone used to caring for fragile things. The weight of her in his arms wasn't heavy, but the story behind her unsteady breathing was. As he guided her toward the guest room the hotel staff had unlocked earlier, evidently arranged by someone from her corporate circle, the hallway felt endless, the carpet muffled their footsteps, and Lyanna's hand tightened weakly around his wrist as if clinging to the last thread of her own control. Adrian had known she was a strict woman, composed, cold even, someone who built walls around herself higher than the success she stood on. But seeing her like this was like witnessing a star fall from its orbit, burning with pain no one else had noticed. When they entered the room, daylight from the city's distant glow filtered through the tall windows, mixing with the softer interior lights. Adrian settled her carefully on the couch because she murmured something faint about not wanting the bed. It reminded her of something, though her words were too blurred to understand. He draped a blanket around her shoulders, watching as her tightly coiled strength finally cracked, allowing silent tears to slip down her face. He didn't ask questions. He simply stayed. It was a habit he had developed after losing his wife, the instinct to sit beside pain quietly, respectfully, without forcing it to explain itself. The night deepened as he helped her drink water, as she drifted between consciousness and exhaustion, her head occasionally resting against his arm as though searching for an anchor she had been denied for years. He didn't touch her beyond what was necessary, didn't cross boundaries, didn't imagine stories. He only existed beside her, steady like a lighthouse meant for storms. And for the first time since he began working at her company, he realized that Lyanna wasn't an unbreakable figure of power. She was someone who had been running too far, too fast, trying to outrun shadows that had finally caught up. His mind wandered to Iris sleeping alone at home, her small hands curled around the stuffed toy her mother had stitched before she passed. He thought of how Iris sometimes whispered that he worked too much, that she missed him, that she worried when he wasn't there. And yet here he was again, sacrificing sleep, sacrificing comfort, sacrificing himself, because he simply couldn't walk past someone who was hurting. Because that was who he was, even when the world barely noticed. Even when the world forgot to show him compassion back. By dawn, the golden light of morning pushed softly into the hotel room, painting gentle shapes across the walls and illuminating Lyanna's face, now calmer, almost peaceful. Adrian stood near the window, arms folded, staring at the city waking up. He didn't know what would happen when she opened her eyes. Would she be angry? Embarrassed? Would she pretend none of this happened? People in power often hid their vulnerabilities under layers thicker than armor. But none of those possibilities prepared him for the moment she slowly blinked awake. Her eyes found him first, confusion, then realization, then something deeper, something softer, something almost painful flickering through them. She pushed herself upright, the blanket sliding from her shoulders, her gaze moving around the room before returning to him with a question he could see forming on her lips, a question she didn't dare voice. Adrian explained quietly, calmly, what had happened, how he had found her, how he had stayed only to ensure she was safe. He didn't judge her. He didn't pry. He didn't say more than necessary. But the silence after he spoke stretched into something thick with emotion, and then she surprised him, and everyone else in the story that would later unfold beyond that room. Instead of shame or anger, Lyanna's expression softened in a way he had never seen at the office. She whispered that she hadn't meant to fall apart like that she had been drowning for months under expectations, loneliness, and a personal loss she had kept hidden from the world. Her father had passed unexpectedly, and she had been forced to continue working, pretending to be strong, hiding the grief that clawed at her. Last night had simply been the breaking point. And then she said something even more unexpected, that no one had ever stayed with her through her worst moments. No one had chosen compassion over distance. No one had been willing to sit quietly, offering nothing but stability. Except him. She told him that what he did, what he offered without asking anything in return, meant more than he could imagine. She said that she didn't see him as an employee anymore, but as someone who reminded her that human kindness still existed in a world that often swallowed it whole. The admission caught Adrian off guard, touching the parts of him he had long locked away, the parts that believed he had nothing left to give besides responsibility and routine. And for the rest of that morning, as sunlight warmed the room, something shifted silently between them, not romance, not instant connection, but understanding. A fragile thread of human connection braided by shared pain, shared silence, and an unexpected moment of vulnerability. Please comment below, sharing what touched you most in this story. As Lyanna insisted on walking him out of the hotel lobby, thanking him repeatedly with a sincerity that didn't match her usual guarded tone, Adrian felt a quiet transformation stirring inside him. Life had tested him again, but this time, instead of breaking him further, it revealed something profound, that compassion still mattered, that second chances could bloom even in the most unexpected places, and that even the smallest acts of care could change the direction of someone's story. If this journey touched your heart, Ripple of Love asks you to support the story. Your likes, shares, and comments truly keep these emotional tales breathing. In the days that followed, Lyanna made changes in her life, real, meaningful ones inspired by that night. She took time off, reconnected with family she had shut out, learned to trust people again. And as she stepped into her healing, she didn't forget Adrian. She reached out to support him too, arranging flexible hours so he could spend more time with Iris, offering opportunities he had never dreamed of, not as charity but as gratitude. And in the final quiet moment of the story, as Adrian walked home one golden afternoon, Iris's hand in his, sunlight stretching warm shadows before them, he realized something powerful. Life didn't always reward grand gestures, it rewarded kindness, presence, humanity. And sometimes, the night you chose to help someone else was the night you unknowingly repaired something inside your own heart.